since it's the first lecture, I'll briefly talk about what exactly the syllabus content is. And in the next lecture onwards, we'll start with the actual topics. Okay. So you know that this course is problem solving using OOP, or object oriented programming. So actually, this course talks about a different paradigm of programming. You have already studied one paradigm of programming in the last semester. What was that called? In C, C is a
Imperative programming.
okay. It is an imperative programming. It is also known as a structured programming. Okay. It is also known as a structured program, or it is also known as, there's one more word, procedural program, right? Because everything that you write in a C program, it is in the form of an algorithm, and the focus is more on the procedure to solve a problem. In order to solve a problem, you focus more on the logic, on the procedure to solve a problem. Or in other words, there are a series of functions that you write, and each function is nothing but it is going to achieve a task. So it's a procedure to solve a task. Okay. So that is procedural programming. The other type of programming is object oriented programming, or OOP, object oriented. Okay. So object oriented programming is a different type of a paradigm where the focus is not on the procedure or the way to solve a problem, but is on the data. The focus is on the data, how one object, so everything is observed in the form of several objects. Every problem statement is visualized with the help of different objects which interact with each other. So these objects which are there, so you have objects, and objects actually interact with each other, and while interacting, they are exchanging some data amongst themselves. Okay. So the focus more is on creation of the object and passing of data. Of course, the procedure is there, but somewhat it is different. The way it is written in object oriented programming is somewhat different from procedural language, that we'll see when we actually discuss the concept in detail. Okay. So before I talk more in detail, I just want to tell you about the examination scheme that we have. Is similar to the last course that we had, that is imperative programming. That is, it's a lab course, 200 marks ISE, okay, which will have 100 marks for the practical performance, lab performance, okay, and 100 marks will be for the quiz, similar to last time. So this will be broken up into these two components. The exact number of quizzes, all that we'll be sharing with you in detail. Then EAC as usual is 100 marks like last time. Apart from that, since the semester is curtailed, we, instead of 2, we have 3 lectures per week, right? So 3 lectures per week, so that we cope up with the syllabus. Okay, and there are total 3 credits assigned to this course as usual. So the structure is similar to C programming that we had. Okay, and of course the prerequisite course is the course that we saw last time, that is problem solving using imperative programming. That is a prerequisite. Apart from that, this semester you have to work harder because it is object oriented programming. object-oriented programming, the concepts are little difficult to grasp, because that concept itself you have to implement using some language. Okay, so for your branch, it is C++, electronics and EXTC, it is C++. Okay, so let us dive into the syllabus that is there. Now, first of all, since you're going to deal with C++, okay, so we are going to deal with C++. Now, what is this C++ language? Now, C++ actually is also known as C with classes. Okay, so what is the meaning of this? It is built on C. Okay, on top of C. So C was there, the initial language, and then since C supports only procedural language or procedural paradigm, it's a procedural language paradigm. This C++ adds something extra to make it object oriented. So C++ adds classes. So C++ adds object oriented programming to C. Okay, so you have C, and C's syntax, the syntax of C++ programs is similar. All the constructs which are there, they are same as C. So that will help you. So while loop you have, for example, some loop you have, or some if else, some control structure if else. Same. C and C++ is the same. Some loop you have like while loop or for loop, that is available in C++. It's the same. The syntax is the same. So that is an advantage if you know C already, that will help you. So all the basic constructs which are there, they are the same. Okay. Now what is additional is the object oriented part. So the OO part is is additional. Okay. And that OO or object oriented part is provided using a class. Okay. So C++ is actually a hybrid language. C++ is actually a hybrid language. It is not a pure object oriented language. Okay. Now what do I mean by this? It's a hybrid language, too much to understand. Okay. It means that it combines several paradigms together. So a hybrid language is a language basically which has multiple different paradigms combined together. So C allows you, C++ allows you to write a procedural code. Can you write a C++ program using only functions and the way you write a C program? The answer is yes. C++ allows you to write a code which looks like exactly like a C program. So I can write a code which has something like a main function. Main function is there here as well. Everywhere in all languages there's a main function. So there's a main function and there is some function above, okay, or below, depends on how you write it. And I can call it similar. I can call add here. This is perfectly valid. This is allowed. This is allowed in C++. Okay. Plus, it also has the facility to add OO code, object-oriented code. So you can have a program which is procedural as well as object-oriented. Okay. So that is why it is a hybrid language. It combines both of these together. It allows you to write a program using OO fashion or procedural fashion. Okay. So it's a hybrid language. Okay. So this is some background about C++. Of course, in detail, when it will be covered when we are going through the topics. So let us look at the outline of our syllabus. So how many modules we have? We have 5 modules in our syllabus, and there is a 6th self-study module that we have, similar to the previous course. Now the concepts which are there, let us see one by one. So the first module that we have, is an introduction, and it talks about encapsulation. So basically, introduction to object-oriented programming will be discussed in this module. So what exactly is object-oriented programming will be discussed. Okay, although I gave you an idea. Okay, procedure, that means functions, the way to solve a problem, versus organizing your program in the form of objects which communicate with each other, that is object-oriented program. Okay, of course, in detail we'll be covering what are the principles of object-oriented programming, what are the features, what are the benefits of writing an object-oriented program, okay, and what kind of applications it can cater to. Okay, so all the basic concepts of object-oriented programming, very much in detail, we'll be studying in the first unit. Okay, then it talks about encapsulation, and at this point we are going to actually introduce the concept of classes. So how do you define, what is the syntax for defining a class? Now just let me give you one idea about exactly what a class is. A class a class a class is of a template, or it is a blueprint for creating an object. Okay, so since I'm talking about objects every time, I have used the word object so many times, right? What do you understand by an object? So what is this object? Object is some entity in the real world or in the problem domain that you're discussing. Okay, so for example, if you are going to model, if you want to talk about a problem which talks about I want to write a program which stores marks of students. You know, we have written similar programs in C. Students of this college. Okay, so in that case, I can say that student is that entity which I'm interested in. That means whatever is the data that I'm going to save in my program will be related to this student. Yes or no? So the problem revolves around a student. So this student is nothing but an entity, and it is called an object in terms of object-oriented programming. So student is an object. Okay, if I am talking about an entire modeling this entire college scenario where I'm talking about the staff also, I want to represent the staff also. So I will also have one more object like employee of the college, right? So employee is also one more object. An employee could be teaching or non-teaching. So there are some teaching staff, there are some non-teaching staff in the college. So each of these that I'm talking about, each of these entities or nouns that I'm talking about, these are objects. When I talk about an object will always have some properties and some behavior. Okay, so properties is all the data which is related to the student or the object, and the behavior is how the object interacts, or what kind of behavior it has, which it showcases. Okay, so for example, let us take another example, like a dog. A dog is an object, right? So what could be the properties of a dog? Can anyone tell me? Talk about animals. I'm talking about dog.
Color and breed.
Color, breed of the dog. Okay, these could be the properties or attributes of the dog. Okay, so these attributes are the properties. Dog will also have certain behavior. For example, dogs bark, right? So bark is known as a behavior. Okay, barking is known as the behavior. So these are the properties or the attributes, and this is known as a behavior. Okay, so this is about the concept of an object in short. And to represent, to model the object, what do you need? You need to represent this in some fashion. You need to represent this in your program, right? So that representation is called a class. The syntactically how you represent this object. Okay, how do you create a blueprint? So for the blueprint, for the template, I need to store these many properties of the dog. Okay, I need to store a color, I need to store breed. So I need to create a sort of a template, okay, in my program, whichever program I'm using. So where one part of the template will have all the attributes or the properties. So for example, for dog, it is color and breed. And the second part will be the behavior. Okay, so the behavior is bark. Okay. This template or blueprint for creating an object is called a class. So we'll again revisit this in detail when we actually talk about that section, when we come to that section in that module. Okay. Then you have these other concepts which come along with it, whenever you define a class. Okay. So you have static data member, methods, constructors. Okay, these are some concepts which are related to objects only. That means objects and classes only. So we'll be covering them. I'm not talking about them because you won't understand anything right now, because that is more related to the syntax of the language. And some keywords, strings, arrays. Okay, so this is sort of a repetition, but now you will have these things within the context of a class. You have already used strings, you have already used arrays in a C program, right? You can use them like a similar C program, but now you will use these strings, arrays, all these things inside a class, okay, as properties of the class. So this is about the first part, where mainly what we are going to do is we are going to actually look at the concepts, theoretical concepts of object-oriented programming, and how to actually implement that in C++ using objects and classes. Okay. One more thing I want to tell you is that this concept is of encapsulation. This term is encapsulation. So in encapsulation, what happens is everything. So if you look at this diagram that I have drawn here, everything is together. The data, this is the data, right? And this behavior actually is going to be a function. This is going to be a function. Okay. And this is the data. The data and the function, whenever I create a class, the data and the function is together. Okay. If you remember, in C, you had this concept of a struct, right? In struct, you had all the properties of that object, right? If you think of that entity as an object, Then all the properties. For example, I create a structure student or a structure dog. All the properties will come. But can I write the function inside the structure? Can I write a function inside the structure, inside the scope of the structure?
No, ma'am.
No,
No,
ma'am.
no. So that is a difference. Here the function is inside the class itself. This is a class. This is a class. The function will be inside the class itself. But in structure, it is separate. Okay. So that means it is encapsulation. Encapsulation is nothing but binding the data as well as the functions together into one, creating a bundle. Everything is inside. It's not separate. That is encapsulation. Okay. Again, it is a very short definition. In detail, we will see when we discuss encapsulation. Next concept, next module is inheritance. In inheritance, basically again is another OO concept, inheritance. So basically it's a parent class child class relationship. Okay. Or as the term suggests, for example, if we talk about, let me use some other color. We talk about a vehicle class, a vehicle object. Okay. So in that case, I can have some sort of a specialization. I can say motorcycle is also a vehicle, right? A car is also a vehicle, right? A bus is also a vehicle. A truck is also a vehicle, right? You can think of different such vehicles. Okay. So inheritance is something like this, that this is one class. These are all classes, whatever I have written, right? All of these are objects, right? All of these are objects individually. So these objects have some common properties. Okay. And those common properties are present in the vehicle class. And they might have their own properties which they add, which make them special. This is a sort of a specialization. They're deriving some common properties which are present in the parent class. So this class is known as the parent class. All the properties which are common will be present here everywhere. But something extra is there, some other properties are there in each of these classes or each of these objects which make them special. Okay. So these are known as child classes. Okay. Also, these are known as subclasses. Okay. This is known as a superclass. So inheritance is basically one class deriving some properties from another. Okay. So that is the idea of inheritance. So all the concept, the exact concept, the different types of inheritance, all that we'll be studying here. And there are special relationships called as aggregation and composition. These also we'll be studying. So you will see that here throughout in this course, in the syllabus, mostly we are looking at concepts only, right? There are many concepts which are there in O programming. So these concepts should be very clear in order for us to implement the same in the lab. If you want to write a O-based program, the concept has to be crystal clear. Then only you can write the program. Okay. So this is the second concept. First was classes, objects, encapsulation. This is the second concept, inheritance. Next, we have what is known as polymorphism. Now, what is this polymorphism? Polymorphism means, anyone has any idea? Poly means many. Morph means forms.
Forms.
Right? So polymorphism means the ability of an object,
Same name given to
yes,
different.
to exhibit many forms. So now again, it's an O concept, little difficult, you will not understand right now. Okay, but you can see here what is written 3.1, 3.2. First is static polymorphism, second is dynamic polymorphism. So there are two different types of polymorphism which is provided to you in any language. Okay, first is static polymorphism and second is dynamic polymorphism. Again, you will not understand what is static dynamic right now, but static is known as compile time polymorphism and dynamic is known as at runtime polymorphism. So it has something to do with when the program runs and when the object is created. Okay, so we will see that later on. Right now I'll not discuss, but the ways to do it is using method overloading, constructor overloading, method overriding that you see here. So method, what is a method? Actually method, this word you are looking at right now, but this function that you have now, the functions that you define in any program, they are known as methods in object oriented terminology. A function that you write translates to a method, okay, in O. So to achieve polymorphism, what we do is we write the function in different forms. That is known as function method overloading. That function is nothing but a method. Okay, method overloading. Now, method overloading means you're writing many functions with the same name, but it is having different forms. That means form will vary in the terms of number of parameters, the type of parameters. In C, could you write a function with the same name and different arguments? There's a function called add. In the same program, can you write a function called add with different arguments with the same name in C?
No, ma'am.
No, it is not allowed, right? Because it will throw you an error. The moment you say another add, it will say this add is already defined. It has to be unique. Function identifier has to be unique, right? That is why it will give you an error. But in object-oriented programming, one method can have same, multiple methods can have same name. Okay, but there are some rules on how you can vary, how you have to vary the parameters. Will have different types of parameters. The type has to be different. The number has to be different. There's several rules. Those rules we'll see when we talk about this particular module. Okay. So that helps you in actually making the object uh, model the real world more closely. That is why this paradigm is there. That is polymorphism. This concept of polymorphism is there in object-oriented programming. Okay. So this is in short about polymorphism. Then we have abstraction. Abstraction is basically, what do you understand by abstraction in English? What is abstraction?
Nouns that cannot be perceived, like some feeling, something.
Okay. Anyone else? What is abstraction?
Idea not based on a real person or something like that.
Okay.
Things not having a physical form, like they
Hmm.
don't, can't be touched physically, but they can be felt.
Crude things.
Okay. So abstraction actually in case of O. So all of you are correct only. Different ways of defining the word abstraction. So abstraction actually means hiding certain details and showing certain details. Okay. Now there's a concept of, so a class that you create whenever you create a student class or a dog class or any class, faculty, vehicle, any kind of class, that class that you create, usually it is a concrete class. That means it exists. Okay. But when you say abstract class, then I cannot, this is a new concept, abstract class. Then in that case, I cannot, it actually is there, but it is not there. Some, that kind of a concept, that is abstraction. Okay. So when we see abstract class, exactly we'll see how it makes sure that some details are hidden and it shows only the essential information to the user. That means what is the internal implementation, that is hidden. How the function method works is hidden, but only the name of the function, the behavior is known, but what exactly, how it is done, that is not known. That is abstraction. So again, it's a little complex to understand right now. Okay. So that is the abstract class. In Java, you also have, since this is C++, you don't have that concept of interfaces, but those who have studied Java, you might be aware of the concept of interfaces. Okay. So that is also there, which helps you achieve abstraction, which is in Java. So abstract class is there in C++. And finally, the last unit is exception handling. So in exception handling, uh, we are going to deal with some errors which are going to rise during runtime. Okay. So there are ways to write it. The syntax provides you, the language syntax provides you these keywords, try, throw, catch, okay, which helps you to catch these exceptions and to handle. So basically it's handling of errors. Okay. So all these concepts will make you, these exception handling is going to help you to write a program which, makes, does not crash. The program will not crash. You are taking care of those exceptions which will handle. So if user is entering something wrong, some invalid kind of data, you are making sure that the program will not terminate abruptly. You are handling it. Okay. You are writing an error message. You're printing out an error message. Some type of exception handling you might have done when you did a C program, but this is some explicit functionality, like these keywords are there, which allows you to handle them more efficiently. Runtime errors. While entering user, instead of integer entering some other data, character enter kiya, string enter kiya. Okay. C does not guarantee you, na, it will behave in any fashion unless and until you write the code that way. But when you're using the powerful concept of exception handling, then in that case, you can take care of that error. Okay, and disallow your program from crashing. Your program will not crash. You are handling that error. Okay, so that is exception handling. So all this is the syllabus, and apart from this, you have the other things that you see below, that is self-study. So file handling is there. File handling, there's an experiment, self-study, but I'll be teaching you some part of it. Okay, and maybe I'll give you some handouts for studying more. And then you have this pointers. Pointers we already know in C. So slightly, there are slight changes, but the basic syntax is the same. Then there is STL in C++. That is a standard template library. Standard template library, which is available, which you can use, which provides a lot of functionality, okay, in the form of templates. You have, for example, you have in STL, you have some sorting algorithms, you have some searching algorithms which are available directly. You can use those algorithms. You have some data structures, like you have stacks, queues, linked lists, which are available, vectors, which are available, and you can use some powerful data structures are available, you can directly use them for your program. So that is STL. Then you have this concept of a virtual function, which is there, which is an additional concept. Okay. So we have only these, whatever is with a dollar mark, that is there because that is part of C++, and whatever is this at the rate, this is not there for us, this is only in Java. Okay. So from these concepts of self-study, whatever is there for the experiments, that I will be covering. So let us see the experiment list. Experiment list, 10 experiments. So you can see several experiments are on, 2 experiments are on encapsulation. Then, right, these 2 are on encapsulation. These 2 experiments are, these 3 are on polymorphism. These 2 are on inheritance, right? And then you have 1 on abstraction, 2 on abstraction, sorry, these 2. And there is file handling. So here you have STL. So STL, definitely one experiment mostly will be working on the data structures like vector class or stack class, whichever is feasible. Okay, at least 2 we will work on. And file handling in C++. So file handling in C++ is different because the classes and all are different. The header files are different in C++, right? The basic flow remains the same, that is opening a file, you know, reading, writing from the file, and then closing a file, but the functions will be different slightly. Okay, so that also we'll be seeing. So this is all about the syllabus. Okay, then coming to the textbooks, which textbook you should refer? So first 2 you see are the textbooks which are there. Bal Guru Sami is a good book for you. Those who have no idea of C++, this is the book you should go for. This book. Okay. There are additional books which are this. This is one more book, and reference book is the complete reference. This is also a very good book. Complete reference. C++, it has everything related to C++ inside. But if you want to study from scratch, go for the first book. That is my suggestion. Okay, it's a very simple, lucid manner explanation in this book. Sorry. Yeah. So go for
Yes,
this.
ma'am.
Now for compiler. Compiler, Turbo C++ you can use, but I don't suggest that. Okay. Which compiler you will use? The compiler is G++. And I think when you have installed that, the compiler on your machine, this also must have been installed. Okay. You can use the code blocks IDE if you're installing on your PC. Use code blocks. Okay. And install the G++ compiler. Online GDB also has provides you with different environments. Online GDB. So C++ compiler also you can choose there, right? C or C++ you can choose the language. So choose the language as C++. This is good to go. You can use online GDB. You can use any other C++ compiler online. Okay. If you're working on, I'm going to work on code blocks. So it's better that you install code blocks. Okay. VS Code and all you can use if you want, but for the practical exam that might be a problem. So it's better you install code blocks. Okay. Any questions you have?
Can't we use VS Code?
You can use VS Code, but for the practical exam, then it might be a problem. You can use VS Code, no issues.
Ma'am, so in case the second sem happens offline in the college, the exams. So will the labs be using code blocks, or will we have to do it on the terminal, Linux terminal?
If you're doing it on the Linux terminal, then in that case, G++.
Okay.
G++, uh, directly you can upgrade it. Your compile, see, by default on a Linux terminal, you have C compiler, GCC, right? GCC is the compiler. Now, if you want to run a C++ program, it will not work. You will have to install some this compiler. So that installation also happens quickly. So I will see whenever I show the running, I will show using both G++ as well as code blocks. So that is why I'm saying, see, now since you have already studied one language, now is the right time actually to use an IDE. So you go for code blocks, you can go for VS Code, any IDE. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
And G++, the way I'm going to compile it, the same way it will work on Linux. So command line by command line also, you will know how to compile. Fine. Any other
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
So all the best to everyone. Work hard, be sincere. Okay, we'll meet
Ma'am,
tomorrow then.
I had a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, in my Viva, the examiner asked me a question. I didn't get the answer.